we'll be looking to try and sometimes just two-shot as well. So
And
we're going straight in.
Speaking of that Zayora, that is unfortunately in the prizes for Pedro. Not 100% sure if they're taking them as we were looking from top to bottom or bottom to top, but at the minute right now that is in the prize card. And then for Owyn we do see the Yvetal, V-Guard, Powerful. Probably not the worst prizes there for Owyn. But one interesting thing I think Owyn's playing, which could really help in this matchup, is the one prize Galarian Moltres. Mostly they're seen to help combat Mew. So obviously Galarian Moltres hits Mew for weakness and hits really hard the later the game goes on. But against LostBox, you want to try and go as one prize for as long as possible. Right? Attack with Archeops, maybe, Radiant Zard. But now you also have that Moltres to throw out there as well to be another one prize irritant. So this is going to be, I guarantee it, a chess game right here. And we get started. Who is going for, I believe, is it Owyn? I can't really tell. I think it might be Owyn. Just trying to sequence that hand out there, working out.
So it does open that Radiant Charizard up against that Cramorant. Pedro, you just mentioned that kind of chess match here. Pedro does also play that game to a very high level, from what I know. But we're going into Owyn's turn here. But yeah, let the viewers at home just let us know in the comments who you think is going to be able to take this matchup as well. Like I said, Lugia VSTAR up against this LostBox. Be really interesting to see how we play out. I think we're just kind of
it's Pedro going first. Sorry, it was Pedro going first. Okay, but like I said, there's so many different wrinkles to this matchup, right? We have, for example, Stoutland, you know, the most obvious LostBox counter for Lugia, you know, being able to, with its double dip fangs, 40 damage, and if it knocks out a basic, take an extra prize card. You know, with powerful energy, that starts to add up, and Comfort, I believe, only has 70 HP, so, you know, earn a few powerfuls there, and you're actually taking 2 prizes on a Comfort. And Stoutland actually isn't the easiest card in the world for LostBox to just eject out of the game, right? There can be scenarios where you get 2 double dip fangs going off, so that is a scary prospect.
100%. It's got that 210 HP, of course. Pedro does play the Snorlax, is playing, of course, the Mirage Gate build. Can potentially do that 180 damage with that thumping Snore, plus maybe a Choice Belt as well. So there's a few maybe options there, but Pedro just looking after this Chorus Experiment to kind of go through, does have that Battle VIP pass in hand. We know how important this card is. We've seen it throughout since its inception, particularly with other cards like the different decks like that play Inteleon and Shady Dealings, of course, just being able to fill up that bench. And you know, LostBox is no different. It wants to kind of get all those pieces onto its board so it can start burning through and getting those cards that it needs.
Yeah, I mean, Mew VMAX as well, a big utilizer of the Battle VIP pass engine as well. So here we see Pedro just looking, probably prize checking as well, just seeing what's been prized, what hasn't been prized. Obviously a great skill that the top players do is, you know, doing that prize check. Super important.
Yep, so just eyeing up a few different options there. Of course, another comp will be not missed because you want to be trying to use that flower selecting as much as possible. He's wanting to get those Lost Zone cards as high and as quick as possible to kind of activate those Mirage Gates so he can get his attackers, those sometimes heavy cost attackers like that Snorlax, to kind of come to the fore and start taking prizes where possible. So that does also go for the Radiant Greninja, looking for the opportunity to kind of put a way of drawing more cards, using concealed cards as well, being able to discard any energy card from his hand to draw a further 2. Again, just kind of looking for those opportunities to try and get through his deck, get to those pieces that he needs so he can start applying pressure.
No, for sure. And Greninja is a really good draw option in a deck like this, right, where, you know, Chorus is only giving you a net 3. Being able to just get 5 a turn is equally bonkers. And then being able to attack with it as well, right? 90 in 2 places is never a bad option. Here we do see that concealed cards. We didn't see a lot of that round 1, even though there was a Greninja. Let's see what we drew there. Let's have a look. We see another comp fair, see a Choice Belt, we see a Scoop Up Net. Scoop Up Net could be good getting that Cramorant out of the active, because as well as good as Cramorant is being able to attack for free with 110, you'd much rather be trying to pivot between comp fairs, get more cards in the Lost Zone so you can work towards cards like Sableye then or Mirage Gate.
Yeah, definitely. And just kind of reconfirm for us as well. I believe Owyn actually did start because obviously we saw Pedro play the supporter. So that means
yes, you're right, actually. Yeah.
Of course, Owyn, knowing that Cramorant doesn't hit for weakness despite being a water Pokemon with that Spit innocently. So knowing that Charizard could tank a hit here, it's absolutely fine. But obviously, Owyn couldn't play any supporters on his turn.
Wow,
is holding that research and doesn't want to bench another basic, kind of take up those bench spots. We saw it in game 1. Round 1, sorry.
Yeah.
With Andre having to kind of kind of manage his bench a little bit because of the Pokemon he had to start with, like the Pumpkaboo. So he didn't really want to sort of force a play into that Galarian Moltres that was in his hand as well. So just passed it over, and Pedro is now kind of going into the Comfey, looking to use his first flower selecting to push that Lost Zone in up to 3. And then we'll just see, yep, there's a little token ready. And here's the first flower selecting of the tournament.
Here we go. Oh, was one of them a VIP Battle Pass? I think one of them might have been.
Yeah, a couple of deciding options here for Pedro. Just checking his hand. Hand already a good size based on the cards used. There's a Roxanne as well. And
it was a VIP, yeah.
Which he's instantly just chosen to go to the Lost Zone there. Valuing the Roxanne, of course, being able to play that a bit later. It is, of course, just a one-off copy in these types of decks to kind of just give a little bit of disruption, particularly in these kind of matchups where, you know, you're going to be going down in prizes because you're only single prizes. Might take some time, but, you know, you can kind of force that issue.
Yeah, for sure. The LostBox decks tend to sort of, you know, be a more of a combat deck. You know, the early turns are normally just filled with stuff like Cramorant maybe until until you get to the, you know, the 7s and the 10s and the Lost Zones. Then you can start swinging out with your Mirage Gates. Then start swinging with Sableye even. An incredible card, that Sableye. Being able to spend 120, well, 12 damage counters, I should say, for 1 energy on a 1 prizer is bonkers.
Yeah, that Lost Mine attack has been sort of helping to define many tournaments at the moment. We've seen Tord use it to great effect when he won in the States as well.
Yes.
Of course, we've seen Pedro use it to great effect in Warsaw. And of course, he's just continuing to use that. You know, once you're used to playing such a intensive deck, you know, there's a lot of micro decisions that you have to make. You get into a groove of being able to make the right decisions at all the right times. And Pedro is obviously using that experience he's had throughout these tournaments so far, playing at LAIC as well. And will just continue because he's going to make as minimal mistakes as possible, despite it being a really what people say is a difficult deck to play sometimes.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, there's just so many micro decisions, like you said. Like even just then, you know, opting to get rid of the VIP Battle Pass turn 1. Like a lot of people think, oh surely that's the obvious take. But you know, Pedro realizing that, you know, maybe the Roxanne for late game is much more beneficial than being able to grab 2 basics now, for example. And it's those sort of micro decisions that over the course of 9, you know, 12, 15 rounds of Pokemon that can really change the outcomes of games. And we do see it back over to Owyn. We see the Collapse Stadium. That's interesting. None of those cards really want to hit the discard pile for Pedro. So let's see what he chooses there. Collapse Stadium making it so both players can only have 4 bench Pokemon. Obviously get rid of the Comfey, which might make getting the Lost Zone a little bit harder, filling out Lost Zone for Pedro.
Yeah, I guess thinking he's already got 4 in there, 1 more flower selecting, knowing that Owyn didn't have a Lugia from turn 1 down, so wouldn't be able to get his Archeops to start trying to maybe apply that pressure from his own side. That's Owyn's current view. He's going to have to try and get those Archeops in as soon as possible. Also, identifying that Pedro may play a Lightning Attacker, so gets that Dunsparce down as well. Does attach the powerful energy to the active and does play the research there.
Was there an Archeops in there?
There may have been one. Just have a quick look.
I'm going to say there's one there in a quick ball, so there's going to be at least one going down now, baby. You'd be a bit sad if you didn't get at least one with that. Interesting decision from Owyn, that opting to bench the Dunsparce. I don't believe Pedro showed any cards that would, you know, reveal that he plays Lightning Attacker. So, and like we saw in round 1, bench space can be a real big issue for Lugia, and Owyn opting to potentially, you know, take 1 bench space away just to confirm that if there was a Lightning Attacker, that it can't just come guns blazing, as it were. So really interesting decision there from Owyn. Love to see it.
I think sometimes you'll start to see a lot of these plays from, you know, these kind of top players having to use some of their one prizer cards, especially when you're going to be using Luminion V to attack in this matchup as well.
Point,
that Aqua return, 120 damage, more often than not taking a KO on Pedro's side of the board, being able to shuffle it back into the deck, preserving those energies as well for Archeops for later, but we'll need to go into a 1 prizer to kind of activate that prize trade and that prize mapping. So the Dunsparce is there as a utility, extra of course to protect the Lugias where necessary, and then also be a Pokemon to kind of switch into. But we do see kind of Owyn just continue going through there. It does have the Lugia down now, does have the Luminion down as well and activated. So we're just going to be seeing, again, it's just going to be a bit of a slow setup, but at the moment it's still okay. Probably doesn't want to have that Luminion on there for too much longer where possible. So the Aqua Return does look like it's probably going to come into effect once those Archeops are there as well. The good thing with Owyn is he doesn't have to force the second Lugia because Pedro is very unlikely to have a way of sort of one-hit KOing it. Does have that 220 HP, so is out of Snorlax range from Mirage Gate as well. So yeah, it's a bit slower from Owyn's side, but I think he might still be a little bit more comfortable for the time being. It'll be interesting to see how Pedro reacts and is able to kind of start applying pressure from his side.
Yeah, like we alluded to, LostBox early turns isn't the greatest amount of pressure being applied, so you can afford to almost take a turn off, right? It's almost like Owyn was going second in this game now, right? Because his first turn, it didn't really do a lot. And we're going back over to Pedro. We see the Colress in hand. It's always a good start.
Yep.
Love to see that sort of backbone of the Lost Zone decks, right? It's really interesting about Colress is you even see non-LostBox decks opting to use it. Like, for example, Arceus Giratina VSTAR. That was a deck that opted to play Colress instead of stuff like Research, just because being able to look at the top 5, take 3, and then Lost Zone 2, giving you that extra information, making it probably the premier add 3 cards to your hand supporter, right? Got stuff like Bird Keeper, for example. But Colress letting you dig a little bit deeper and then grabbing what you want, while also thinning cards you may not want. Really good supporter option. Yeah,
it's fantastic for those cards which play combo type sort of synergy, because then you're looking at more cards, you're keeping the cards in your hand. Sometimes you want to see as many cards as possible that you play the Research, but sometimes you don't want to be discarding certain cards as well. So then being able to see 5, select 3 kind of just helps that combo pieces kind of come together a lot easier as well. As you can see there with Pedro, we're just kind of going through. He's up to 6 now in that Lost Zone. Still looking to use that flower selecting and then hopefully look to use Mirage Gate and start, like I said, start applying pressure to Owyn's side of the board. Of course, with a lot of the Lugia decks, there's very minimal sort of recovery, if any, at all. Exactly. So if there's a way to maybe take out this Charizard, that's a single prizer gone there for Owyn. It does have 160 HP. Of course, that Snorlax will be able to thumping snore it out of the way with 180 damage. Of course, then does put itself to sleep. But there's lots of opportunities there. And there's the easy flower selecting. They're just counting as well up to the 7.
Tell you what, if there's a Mirage Gate in Pedro's hand, we could see a gnarly Greninja attack here with that Moonlight Shuriken, taking out the Charizard with weakness, and then actually KO in the Dunsparce, removing that, turning weakness back on for that Zayora if it decides to show up. That might be a line I would like to see. I don't think he has the Mirage Gate in hand though. I can't see it. He does play a max 4 copies of it, and we do, thanks to those lovely ability use markers, he's already used that Greninja ability already.
Yeah, so he's just attaching to get that retreat into the Cramorant. Looks like he's just going to apply some pressure that way. Of course, Cramorant able to spit innocently for 0 energy cost because of its ability, Lost Provisions, as long as it has 4 or more Lost Zone cards for your side of the board, of course. So it looks like that's going to be the way that Pedro starts applying pressure, does the 110 to that Radiant Charizard there, and it's back over to Owyn.
And what's good about just the sort of synergy between Cramorant and Sableye is that, Cramorant puts in the early game and then Sableye can just always clean it up like that. Charizard only having 50 hit points left, I believe. Very easy pickings for a Lost Mine to just come in. And going back over to Owyn, still has a little bit of work to do. He does have the Manaphy in hand as well, so the sort of door for Greninja might be closing. But I guess if the Manaphy comes down, there won't be 2 bench spots open actually. Exactly. So maybe that bench base again, that Charizard coming in the early game, really proving to be a thorn in Lugia players' side, right? You don't really want it there. It's sort of taking up valuable bench spots. And while here we do see the Research get rid of Manaphy, that Manaphy is going to no longer be an option for the rest of the game. Really interesting. Yeah, definitely. And I guess it's one of those things where we're starting to see players sometimes play one or the other of Manaphy as well. But just because of that bench space being really awkward. And we do see the Lugia VSTAR there getting ready to use Summoning Star. And there's the one Just one target? Has he only got one in the discard this whole time?
Maybe thinking that's enough as an opportunity there, being able to, use the 1 Archeops to use Primal Turbo. Not something we typically see often in a Lugia deck, of course.
I mean, I guess you could argue that if you're only having to hit 1 prize Pokemon, you can try and function off 1 Primal Turbo, but I think against LostBox, you'd really love to try and go one prize for as long as possible, and then in that scenario, you would actually want to start attacking with the Archeops. And when you've only got one, you can't really afford to attack with it anytime soon, because once it goes down, then you're stuck to only attaching one energy per turn, and that is not a place you want to be in as a Lugia player. So,
and there's the over KO there by the Combustion Blast Charizard, dealing 250 damage, of course, on that poor Cramorant. And being able to activate the prize race now. So Owyn now going down to 5 prizes. Of course, may have a little bit of trouble for the rest of the game. It'll be clear and really interesting to see how we are able to kind of progress through, because, you know, with just one Archeops being able to pull out 2 energies every time, a lot of the attackers that Owyn's side of the board will need 3 energies to be able to do so. Of course, he has the hand attachment as well.
Yes.
So yeah, let's see how Owyn will be able to kind of play through this game, having activated it now. But Pedro here, kind of again just confirming for himself that he's got 7. Does have it laid out on the screen.
We do see the Mirage Gate here, so we might see the Greninja play here, being able to take 2 prize cards with a 1 prizer. Good amount of pressure, and removing 4 special energy as well at the same time. And might be the play I would like to see, but let's see what Pedro does. He's obviously an amazing player. Let's see what happens. But yeah, I think you alluded to it, being able to attach 1 energy from hand is the only saving grace for Owyn right now. Like, he should be able to still be able to attack, getting 2 from deck and 1 from hand, but that puts a lot of pressure actually having energy in the hand. And here we see the Mirage Gate. Let's see where the target is. You do have to choose, but let's have a look. Let's see. We could even see. We could just see the Snorlax. We could see the Greninja. We see a Lightning Energy opt into, and we see a Water. That could be Greninja then.
Yeah, a couple of different options here. I think Greninja seems like the most sensible play. I'm sure Pedro's kind of gone through the different attackers there. You also need to just make sure, there's the energies kind of come down straight to the Greninja, ready to use that Shuriken attack of its to be able to deal 90 damage to 2 of your opponent's Pokemon by discarding 2 energies there. So a really threatening stage and board state here from Pedro's side. Just now needs the 1 manual attachment and way of retreating that combo. The good thing is he doesn't need to worry about Charizard's weakness anymore. So if he has an escape rope, it's absolutely fine, because it's already got that initial early damage from Cramorant as well. So lots of different ways for Pedro to be able to maneuver around now as he goes into another flower selecting, continuing picking up some key resources for this matchup.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point actually about the escape rope. I believe I did see one in his hand as well, so that could be interesting. Forcing up something that Owyn might not want. I mean, in that scenario, he might just put up the Dunsparce, knowing that it's going to get killed anyway, then he can at least go into what he wants next turn. But yeah, right now, here's Scoop Up Net. I imagine that'll probably be on the active. And that's something you don't get to see every day, is that Greninja being able to attack into Lugia for 2 prize cards. I mean, Greninja's attack, let's not make any mistake, Greninja's attack is absolutely insane. Do you remember Rapid Strike Urshifu would do 120 in 2 plays? But that's on a 3 prize Pokemon. This is a 1 prize Pokemon that not only draws you cards for the whole game, but can actually do a 90 in 2 places, right? An insane attack. Moonlight Shuriken coming in the clutch here, taking 2 prize cards, I imagine, off Lugia.
I mean, he does have opportunities to try and soften up other things as well.
True.
So no, with Lugia, the VSTAR having 280 HP, if he puts a 90 there, for example, if there's a point where Owyn has to attack with it, that Snorlax can come in with the Choice Belt, being able to deal 210 and sort of take the knockouts there. But it's starting to just feel like there's multiple routes for Pedro to take. Of course, being able to maybe target the Dunsparce, but he knows that Zeraora's prize. It doesn't quite know it's at the top of his prizes, and typically players tend to take from the bottom upwards. But at the moment, there's lots of options here. So
it is an interesting decision, like you said. Being able to soften up the Lugia to bring it into Snorlax range is actually huge. I don't think it ever goes on Lumineon, because Lumineon's Aqua returns anyway. I don't think it ever goes on Archeops either, unless you want to try and bring it in range of a Lost Mine. Could be an option actually, just completely removing that from play. Sableye with the Greninja into Sableye play could actually be super clutch, to be honest.
Yeah, we're seeing some damage
and it was
counters.
The Archeops. It was,
I mean, you're targeting down just the 1 Archeops, and that's the only way of sort of accelerating energy to Owyn's side of the board. And we do see the knockout on the Charizard as well. Pedro knowing that his Zeraora is prized, so that Dunsparce is kind of just an extra Pokemon there, just waiting to be knocked out at any stage. So also now going down to 5 prizes, but setting up that Archeops, which is massive.
Yeah, and you have to imagine then if the Archeops goes down for Sableye, that means at that point Stoutland is never an issue at that point because you never let it, get the free powerful energies. So here we do see the Lugia coming in. No, Lugia is still a big beefy Pokemon. Let's not make no mistake about it. Tempest dive 220 over KO in that Greninja.
Yeah, definitely again, and then the opportunity or option to discard a stadium in play is there as well.
Yes.
But of course, keeping that collapsed in play at the moment makes it so that Pedro can't keep kind of chaining into these things. But of course, also limits Owyn's side of the board. That's why there's a couple of tricky options about deciding to play that stadium or not. But, just straight into a return KO there, going into 4 now. And Pedro just wanting to make sure, because Lost Mine does require the 10 in the Lost Zone. So does need a couple more in there to be able to start using that attack to then take out that Archeops. Of course, leaves the energy on the Lugia. But yeah, puts Pedro in a commanding position.
There's so many options for Pedro right now. I'm just trying to work them all out. We could even see the Greninja come back off an ordinary rod quick ball, which could then set up the Lugia and take out the Archeops at the same time, meaning then that the Snorlax can just come swinging in. We could see Greninja come back, go for the KO on Dunsparce and Archeops at the same time, and then just go through this Lugia at a slow, leisurely rate. So many options. 11 at the Lost Zone now, which means Sableye is also an option. We could even see that, right? Just to take out the Archeops, put some damage on Lugia, or take out Archeops, and oh my goodness, this is the strength of the LostBox deck. Right? When you get to that 10 cards in the Lost Zone, you can start doing crazy things. You can accelerate 2 energy from deck. You can spread 120 with Sableye. You can. It just gets a bit mad, doesn't it? To be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I think from Owyn's side, it looks like he's maybe a little bit on the back foot right now, despite being 1 prize ahead. Pedro there now up to 11. Does have that Sableye, as you mentioned, just ready to go. Just needs that. It only needs a psychic energy to be able to use that Lost Mine attack. So just planning out through so many different cards right now that's in his hand. Look at that. It's just typical of what happens with a lot of these Lost Zone or Lost Box decks. And down comes the ordinary rod to be able to put up to 2 Pokemon and up to 2 energies back into the deck. So reactivating that Mirage Gate as well. And it looks like that Greninja and the Cramorant is going to be coming back into the deck as well. But if I'm Pedro right now, I'd feel quite comfortable in my position, I think, in terms of how I'm set up, the amount of options and in his hand. So yeah, just straight back, the 2 water energies and the 2 water Pokemon there.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, Pedro is in a commanding position here. If that Archeops goes down, that also means that the Lumineon isn't going to be able to shuffle itself back in, meaning that there will be 2 prize cards there just chilling, and the Sableye can just take 2 turns. Like, there's ways for Pedro to win where he doesn't even really bother with this Lugia right now. He can just keep attacking the bench, as it were. And that Snorlax, they'll be able to do 210. So many options, and it looks like we could even be seeing the Snorlax getting set up. Snorlax is an incredible card, right? With 180 damage on a 1 prize Pokemon. Even though it does, put itself to sleep and it's hard to wake up, all you need is just that big 180 swing or 210 swing in this scenario being really good. And it looks like Pedro's opting to play a quick ball here, trying to work out which card to take. And there we do see the Greninja come straight back down as well. And that's the thing, when Greninja can run amok with no Manaphy, it gets a little bit crazy, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, you've already touched on how powerful of a card it is. These Radiant Pokemon really being important in a lot of decks. With Greninja giving you both draw power and also an excellent utility attacker, kind of threatening the board. It means Owyn has to, or other players that you're facing in a Greninja sometimes have to think about using Manaphy at the right times. So it's such a powerful card to have be able to have an attack and an ability that does amazing things. Incredible to see. And of course, there we see the Oranguru. It's been a staple in many decks as well, being able to mix things up. Does have the Mirage Gate. I can see that's why maybe he attached the energy to the Snorlax, because then that Mirage Gate only needs 1 energy onto the Sableye to start putting damage on that Archeops. So let's see how Pedro plays out this turn. Of course, so many options. I mean, he's holding about double digits in cards, surely.
We do see 1 on the Sableye.
Yeah,
okay.
Kind of expected. Starting prepping the Greninja's nice as well.
Back on the Greninja. See that Greninja? I'm telling you, that Greninja's getting ready. Greninja is... Honestly, well, as soon as that Manaphy went down, I knew for a fact that Greninja was going to start throwing around those shurikens. And honestly, 92 places is insane. Easily one of the premier Radiant cards, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen from Owyn's side, that Radiant Charizard being able to deal massive damage as well. Also with such a unique and cool ability, as well as that Combustion Blast 250 attack. But here's the pivot and free retreat now into the Sableye, and now we're just going to start seeing some damage counters being sprinkled over Owyn's side of the board.
Right, so I imagine that this Archeops is probably always going down, right? Where do you think the rest of this damage is going? I guess it could go Lugia. You could start setting up Dunsparce. Okay, well, there we go.
Well, it's a 60, or that 60 HP that was remaining on the Archeops. Does have 6 more damage counters to play with, and it looks like
is that a concession?
Yeah.
I think that's a concession, yeah.
I think that's the kind we keep referring back to, because it does deal a lot of damage. And we'll just go back to the players now as they're setting up for Game 2. Pedro 1-up, of course. And now just looking at the prizes from Owyn's side.
We do see the Stoutland. So we just talked about on the keys for the matchup there for Lugia. Stoutland actually in the prize now. I believe it's at the bottom. And I think Alex said that the players are taking them bottom to top as we see them. So maybe that Stoutland comes out quick. But that's a little hurdle, but then I guess there is a little bit of a silver lining here. That Charizard's there, so it can't be clonking up the spot by being in the active. But there's also one VSTAR and an Archeops. And the one thing about Lugia, as crazy and as broken and as strong as it is, it does need to get that combo off turn 2. It needs to get 2 Archeops in the discard pile, and it needs to get a Lugia turn 2. And when you prize one VSTAR, you prize an Archeops, and you prize 2 Ultra Ball, that's a lot of compounding issues that might make it hard for Owyn to get that combo off.
Yeah, and 100%. So we're going straight into our Game 2.
The Pumpkaboo in the active, another Pokemon you really don't want to see, and it's going to be taking up bench spots as well.
Yeah, that's it, and it's just very much a quick ball there. I think that's an Archeops straight into the discard there as well, straight for the Lugia onto the bench. So I assume he might have just drawn into it. So just kind of identifying another option there. Of course, Owyn going first, having lost Game 1, looking to try and just build up his board as soon as possible. Whilst Pedro is going to be looking to try and just begin setting up and trying to use maybe Cramorant to apply pressure early on as well. But just touching on Pedro's side, he does prize 2 Chorus Experiment, which may kind of hinder some of the opportunities to put some of those cards into the Lost Zone at the moment. But here we see Owyn go straight down with the Luminion as well, goes for the research into hand, gets that already, attaches the energy, it looks like, to the Luminion, kind of setting up to be an attacker soon as well. So let's see how Owyn is able to then kind of continue through and see if he can get that Summoning Star V-Star ability, V-Star power ability of Lugia V-Star on going into his second turn. But I believe it's not going to be much more that Owyn could do at the moment. But what else do you need at this current moment in time? You just need that Lugia down.
Yeah, I quite like the attachment there on the Luminion, because Owyn recognising that he's already a bench bot down with that Pumpkaboo, really can't afford to have that Luminion knocking about any longer than it has to. So just try and get it back into the deck, get that bench bot free, and then you can try and manoeuvre around a little bit, because what you don't want to do is try and avoid that one Archeops in play. Speaking of it, we haven't even seen it in this one. Probably won't, but that's another crazy part of Lugia, right? And Pedro looking very upset there, having to quick ball away Scoop Up. Scoop Up is obviously an incredible, integral part of LostBox, letting you pick up a non-Roblox Pokemon, put it back into your hand, allowing you to reuse abilities such as Greninja, allowing you to reuse and pivot around your Comfeys as well, all really important. Here we see Pedro price checking the energy there, something that a lot of top players do, really important, so you don't try and make plays for cards that aren't there, and just taking the time out on your first turn to just know what's in your deck and what isn't, so you don't make any potential mistakes.
Yeah, and I think from both these players, given the opportunity, Owyn did exactly the same, kind of go through his deck, make sure he understood what was prized. He would have identified that the Stoutland was prized, would have identified that one of his big single prizes were prized as well in that Radiant Charizard. So really an opportunity here for everyone to kind of see 2 top players, kind of the motions and kind of turns they have to take. To be able to play this game at a high level. So really good way of kind of picking up little tips and little tricks throughout the tournament as well. Despite also playing, as we mentioned in the first round, playing under all those lights as a feature game. There's a lot more added pressure, but you just got to be able to play your game and go through. But here we do see Pedro go straight for that Luminium V as well. Is also an attacker from his side of the board, don't forget, with that Mirage Gate.
That's a good point.
So can get that off the board, goes for one of his 2 remaining Chorus Experiment in his decks, obviously with 2 prized, knowing it's going to be vital for him to get into the game this way by using that supporter to kind of progress through.
So I think I saw a VIP part. No, tell a lie. There's a scoop up net. That is probably not the greatest card you want to see here for Pedro. I imagine Pedro really doesn't want to use that Luminion just to grab a Chorus. Because looking at his list, he plays 1, 2, 3, 3 one-off supporters that might struggle to draw into now without the access to Luminion. But I'm guessing his hand really probably isn't the greatest if that's what he has to do. But that's part of the problem when you prize 2 of your Chorus. You're going to struggle to find them. So
I think that was a scoop up net and a Kamerman that might have hit the lost zone box.
Yeah,
so
I think the
prioritizing the energies that were in that Chorus experiment there does already have another scoop up net in hand as well. So it'll be interesting to see how he plays this going forward.
So I think this might be a Greninja and Prey here to see what these 2 cards are. That hand is not looking. There's no ball search, no VIPs. Okay, there was a quick ball and a scoop up net, so we can at least maybe get some Comfeys coming down. You scoop up the active, put a Comfey in there, do a flower selecting.
And potential another concealed cards. There's a Snorlax as well.
That as well, yeah.
So lots of options with this deck. That's why it's one of those decks which are really difficult to play, or people find and consider very difficult to play, because there's so many options. And there's the capture energy as well. So also bringing another Comfey into the game without even having to use too much. Those capture energies, a great utility card, being able to apply that colorless energy, but also when attaching from hand, being able to search for a basic Pokemon, putting it straight onto the bench. It's a great card, even if you don't have those battle VIP passes, almost being able to be a nice utility way there. Yeah,
we've seen Capture Energy get played a lot. Some Lugia lists play it a lot. I think Andre actually played the full 4 copies in round 1. Owen here's playing 2 copies, and we see it sometimes in Arceus decks in the past. Real good consistency card there, providing energy and letting you grab a Pokemon as well. Not just on turn 1 like VIP Battle Pass, you can do it at any time as well. Never a bad thing. So let's see, here we go, scooping that. I imagine this is probably going to be on the active, and like you said, allowing you to get a flower flower picking, I should say, and get another use of Greninja as well. Just allow you to really feel those cards, and then if you imagine how many cards Pedro would have seen now, 5 cards off the Chorus, take 3. Then you get the Greninja to draw another 2. Then you get Flower selecting to draw another 1. And you get another. And you can see really quick how LostBox can just build these hands and have so many options available. Pedro is not looking happy with that.
That's a telltale sign. I mean, we're starting to see lots of little things in sequencing from these players as well. Pedro not choosing, of course, to use flower selecting before concealed cards. Often a lot of the reason why is you want to be able to not maybe lost zone specific cards early on, so you want to see them first. The more information you have, the better your flower selecting can be. And that's why we see a concealed cards before the flower selecting there. And just there, another card straight into the lost zone. That switch card, another way of kind of pivoting across different Pokemon as well. And there comes another quick ball, discarding that second alternate art Snorlax there, which is fantastic to see. But I reckon likely to see another Comfey to kind of start going through into the Lost Zone engine. It looks like a nice, pretty purple Pokemon there.
I thought it was a Punkaroo for a sec then. I was like, well, what's going on here, Pedro? But no, it is another Comfey, sort of backbone of that Lost Zone engine. Like you said, Snorlax sitting in the discard pile there. I mean, we do see 2 copies of Ordinary Rods, so the discard pile, is pretty accessible for Pedro. It's never really truly gone unless it's in the Lost Zone for this deck. So let's see what Pedro opts to do. I think there was another switching card in hand. It might have been a switch card off the top of my head, or we could see an Air Balloon Retreat as well.
Yeah, having a fantastic pivot option at every moment is really key. With these types of decks as well, or with any deck really, just being able to kind of give you extra utility and options available to yourself. And then Pedro going into that other Comfey, ready to potentially use another flower selecting here, pushing himself up to the 4 in the Lost Zone.
Which now means Kamerman is live, potentially.
Exactly.
Kamerman is live.
Oh, it's another little shake of the head. That poker face not quite coming through. There's a Manaphy going into the Lost Zone now.
I mean, I guess Pedro might not know if Owen plays that amazing rare Raikou. That isn't wow. That is a suspect hand.
It's going to be just a pass over. Those turns when you're playing Lost Zone is very much a slow deck because there's so many decisions involved. And Owen straight in with the research.
Yeah, there was 2 Archeops in the discard pile. Now, do we see a way to get to the Lugia VSTAR?
It does have an Ultra Ball.
Oh, there is an Ultra Ball.
Just kind of sequencing his hand there because there's a number of options that you have to go through. He wants to be keeping a lot of the single prizes. Of course, that Yveltal, that amazing rare Yveltal, maybe not the most ideal because it does require 5 energies for that amazing destruction attack, but is another single prize attacker. But there comes the Ultra Ball, just kind of making sure which one he needs to get that Lugia VSTAR, to get those Archeops out, and then maybe start just finding a way to Luminion back into the Pumpkaboo.
Yeah.
However, that Pumpkaboo is active. Does have 2 retreat costs.
No, that is a bit interesting,
which is why
cool.
Really important to get the double Archeops out. And there you go. We do see the Lugia V-Star. Owyn also identifying the Dunsparce is available there as well on the deck.
And
straight
there
on.
We see the Summoning Star for 2 Archeops this time. And I think this game could be a little bit different. Owyn could be on the front foot here. Like you said, just needs to maneuver that Pumpkaboo out of the way. Then we can see the Aqua Return for a KO. Worth noting that Aqua Return can be used for a DTE now because Comfort only has 70 HP, so the Aqua Return goes down to 100, which means it can be a KO with that, which might make it easier for the Pumpkaboo to get out of the way. Pumpkaboo does have a 2 retreat cost. He's a chunky fella, as it were.
And that's it. You can instantly see the first Primal Turbo there from the Archeops, one of the DTs straight onto the Pumpkaboo, and there's the extra additional energies onto the Luminion V as well, ready to kind of activate its Aqua Return attack for 120 damage because it doesn't have the DTE attached. It does have that Aurora, of course, being able to supply that water energy and the energy attachment from hand with that capture energy to get the Dunsparce ready as well. Again, identifying that maybe Pedro's, he might have seen that one of those lightning energies from Pedro's side of the board, and that's a Lost Vacuum, getting one of his own cards into the Lost Zone now. Removing that air balloon, doesn't want to give Pedro that free retreater. And there you go. There's the Aqua Turn knockout. There's the choice. He looks like he's deciding a few different options there. Of course, has to play around sometimes around the escape rope because he hasn't seen any of that from Pedro's side of the board yet. Does go with the Archeops, which is quite a tanky boy with 150 HP as well.
Yeah, I think that's what makes Lugia really scary. Like, even if you Lugia players don't get down the mana fee, it's really hard to actually KO these Archeops. Right? Like we mentioned earlier, the Rapid Strike Urshifu, well known for its bench manipulation, right? 120 in 2 places. That doesn't KO an Archeops. That doesn't even KO an Archeops, even if you use quick shooting. So these Archeops, stage 2 Pokemon tend to have higher HP and all that jazz. And that's one thing that makes Lugia so strong, is that it can cheat these evolution walls, get 2 stage 2s out, strong ability, decent HP. Just makes it hard to access them, really. And LostBox struggles to actually hit 150. I mean, Sableye only does 120. The most easy way, I believe, would be the Snorlax or the Zaora, but you would imagine you don't really want to be using Zaora to take one prize.
Yeah, not being able to really do so because it's not V or GX.
You are correct.
But yeah, I mean, having to also potentially hit for weakness doesn't really help too much there, unfortunately, because of his attack. But the Snorlax is there for that reason. But also, we've seen it already in game 1, that kind of setting up the additional damage with the Cramorants and the Greninjas, and then the Lost Mine just being able to sweep and take some prizes there. But again, we go into a flower selecting Pedro, so many options already in hand, of course, although his hand was a little bit...
a lot of energy, at the very least, a lot of energy. But we are sort of working towards that Mirage Gate now, which means your Snorlax can be live, Cramorant is live. What you said, you can always set up this Archeops and take it out with a Lost Mine. Like we said in the keys for the matchup, Sableye is just so good for this Lost Mine depth and able to just hit stuff with a 110 or the 180, just finish it off with Greninja and or Sableye. Here we see a scoop up net on the Greninja, and this is what Greninja's really good for. If you've got bad hands, just pitch those energies away and just keep drawing, +2, +4, +6 cards even. Flower selecting, gets you in the +1s and just gets a little bit out of control. Let's see what it's worth. VIP Battle Pass, was that? Wait, that wasn't a pass, was it? No.
No, it's just a check.
A VIP Battle Pass, not really what you want to see past turn 1.
No, it's going to be one of those cards that Pedro will be looking to try and maybe discard where possible with maybe a couple of his quick balls, or ideally would have wanted to try Lost Zone some of those. There's the energy attachment with the capture energy to that Comfort, now being able to retreat using that, but also now picking up another basic Pokemon from his deck to be able to put on his bench. Eyeing up that Comfort, looking to try and just continue through because he does need one more, as you already mentioned, to be able to activate that Mirage Gate. So a couple more cards that Pedro will be looking to try and see and try and progress through into this game, give himself an opportunity to try and, again, either maybe take out this Archeops or just kind of apply pressure from his own side of the board.
I imagine he'll be really wanting to try and find that last copy of Colress. Prizing 2 Colress in a deck like this is, you know, can be quite costly. It sort of reminds me of those sort of greens exploration decks back in the day where you really relied on those 4 supporters to carry you through. And if you like prize 1 or 2, it means you've only got 2. You had to Luminion for 1 turn 1, which means you've only got 1 Colress in that big deck there. And like I said, you are drawing a ton of cards, Greninja, Flower Sleds, and all that jazz. But it's not like a research. We get 7 at the same time, and you're trying to dig for a 1-off now at this point. Can be quite critical.
Yeah, so he'll be wanting to try and get to 10 as soon as possible. It looks like that Flower Selector maybe gave him that option for that Zero Aura.
I believe so, yeah.
The reason why he wants to get to 10 as well, that Pumpkaboo, 60 HP, that Dunsparce, 60 HP.
Fantastic.
So Lost Mind being able to put 12 damage counters does mean Pedro does have a 2-prize turn there. I think just both players just double-checking there. Potentially just everything all okay there. It looks like the Ordinary Rod
target,
being played. So there's so many options and actions from Pedro's side of the board because we've already seen like Owyn having to play relatively quickly when he applied that research as soon as possible as soon as it came back to his side of the board. So there's the Ordinary Rod, shuffling it back in. Pedro just making sure he doesn't make any mistakes, of course. It's one of those intensive, you know, many micro-decision decks, so he just has to make sure he does things as correct as possible.
100%. Like you alluded to there, you know, Owyn having to, you know, we look at the round time at the bottom, there's 8 minutes left, and Owyn was probably going to want to try and get this game wrapped up in 8 minutes, so, you know, you can at least get a tie in this scenario. But that's one of the things about LostBox, you're only giving up 1 prize at a time. If things aren't going well, you're only giving up 1 prize at a time, and there's not a lot of decks in this format that can say that, right? Like Lugia can kind of say that because you can use stuff like, you know, your Vettel and Charizard, and that's one reason why the Lugia is so strong. But, you know, decks like Palkia that we saw in the last round, that's given up 2-3 prizes almost every turn. Mew's always giving up 2 or 3 prizes every turn, so games tend to be quick, whereas LostBox can just slow that tempo down nice and fast. Over to Owyn, we do see the Luminion come flying down into the arena. Yeah.
So just giving opportunities to know maybe to target a different attacker. That Luminion V on Pedro's side of the board, also another way to kind of accelerate to take prizes earlier as well, because that's the only V card that Pedro plays.
Yes.
That gives up 2 prizes. Of course, wanting to potentially look at, I think this is also a Primal Turbo coming down as well now from Owyn's side of the board. He's just making sure his energy counts are good for him to be able to use those attacks. Eyeing up the DT and an Aurora so that Lugia's attacks are activated now, and maybe using that to try and target down with the Serena onto that Luminium V. That energy on the active Archeops, of course, allowing it now to kind of pivot and just retreat with that energy cost. There you go, there's the high energy. Straight into the discard, Lugia into the active, and the Serena being played for 2 prizes being taken once Lugia V-Star is able to use that Tempest Dive attack for just 200 damage, with that DTE attached. So looking strong here for Owyn, and it goes straight back over to Pedro. There's just 3 prizes remaining now from Owyn.
Yeah, Owyn's been taking those prizes at a quick rate there. 3 prizes left. I think it can definitely happen that he can win this game for sure.
Yep.
Pedro, you know, options are looking a bit scarce. That hand is not great. We do see the Mirage Gate now at 7 and the Lost Zone, so we can see the Mirage Gate come down. But, you know, Lugia, 280 HP, it's not going anywhere anytime fast. And then the Archeops, like you said, being able to just refuel anything. You know, Aqua Return can take a KO at this point. Even the what's it called? Speed Ring can actually take a KO at some point as well. So Owyn is not short of attackers by any means. And then the only downside for Owyn there is having that Pumpkaboo there. And even the Dunsparce from Owyn prevents Pedro from using that Zaora, which would have been incredible in this scenario had Dunsparce not been there. Just removing that threat, you know, going 2 prizes, taking 2 prizes there as well, applying some pressure. As it stands now, this Lugia probably isn't going to go anywhere.
No, with 280 HP, there's nothing from Pedro's side which would allow him to take this one-hit KO because of that Dunsparce as well. So, you know, it'll be interesting how Pedro plays this out. Does already use the Mirage Gate onto that Greninja.
Yeah, we could see.
So we could see a double attack play from the Moonlight Shuriken, dealing 90 to 2 different Pokemon. Maybe setting one up and taking 1 prize. It'll be, you know, we'll see how Pedro plays this out. But of course, is using Primate Wisdom just there as well from the Oranguru. And just kind of going through his deck, and now is moving into the Flower Selecting. Probably likely put that Battle VIP pass to the top. Another utility way of using 2 very cool synergy type abilities there. And here we go. There's the other attachment to the Greninja.
Right. So
now just needs a switch out to that active Comfey.
Yeah. So what do we think we're going to see here? Do we see a Dunsparce and a Pumpkaboo KO here going 2 prizes? Do we see... I imagine Dunsparce is probably always a target, right? Because that means then you can use the R, which is in your hand. But then where do we see this other... Excuse me. Where do we see this other 90 go? 2 Mirage Gates. See, holding that 0. Look, that is ready. So I imagine Dunsparce is always going here. Where do you think this other 90 goes?
So again, there's multiple options. I mean, we already kind of mentioned if he was able to get the Lost Mine and take the other Pumpkaboo as well. But going onto the active Lugia, that means he doesn't necessarily have to use Aurora to take the knockout there. So there, so he does go for the Pumpkaboo, and Dunsparce go down. So it does have the Zeraora on the bench as well, kind of threatening that.
Yeah, no,
Owyn
for sure.
Instantly coming down with another Aluminium V again and a Primal Turbo there. Yeah, it could have been an interesting way to, I think we mentioned it in the game 1 as well, putting the 90 on the Lugia, because he already began setting up the Snorlax with the Choice Belt, obviously holding the double Mirage Gate as well. So, yeah, again, a plethora of options there for Pedro, and chooses to take the 2 prizes and bring himself down to 4, and Owyn now having to just look at what options are available to him. And there's just the attack. There's the Tempest dive there by the Lugia, taking out the Greninja. Now going out to 2 prizes. And Pedro going to be eyeing up multiple ways of kind of taking this KO now, if possible, because he now can see his way of taking 4 prizes. They're both on the board. So if he doesn't have the Choice Belt for the Zeraora to be able to take a 1-hit KO on this, Lugia, of course, has a few options. Does have that free retreat, which is another lovely pivot option.
Oh, wow, it's got free retreat. Didn't even realise that.
As well.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a great card sometimes in some of these Lost Zone decks. So lots of utility there. But also has that Luminion just kind of sat there waiting with only 180 HP or 170 HP.
170 actually. Yeah.
So an easy knockout target for that Snorlax as well.
Yeah, and you have to imagine that Pedro would like to see in those multiple 2-prize Pokemon down, giving him a chance to actually take this game and get those 6 prizes before Owyn does. Owyn definitely, but this is definitely a game that could go either way though, for sure.
So yeah, just Pedro's eyeing up a few different options here.
Getting
from
rid
that
of 2 Pokemon.
Colress.
Getting 2 Pokemon off the Colress there. You have to imagine you probably don't need too many Pokemon to close this game out now, as the time does tick down though. Capture energy onto, I imagine, Zeraora, it looks like. That's in the active. Let you search out. Let's see if he takes anything there. Could take Sableye, actually, just to get it involved and ready. Because now we are at 10 in the Lost Zone now, so Lost Mine is live, letting you get 12 damage counters and put them in your opponent's Pokemon any way you like. Equally crazy. We could even see that Roxanne get played. Oh no, he played Colress this turn, didn't he? Yeah.
Yeah, there's another Mirage Gate just coming down there from.
There's the Electro.
There's the Electro Energy. That 30 damage base from that Fighting Lightning attack needs that Lightning and 1 colorless. With the text, if your opponent's active Pokemon is a V or a GX Pokemon, this attack does 80 more damage. So 110 right now, multiplied by 2 because of the weakness. So not quite taking care yet. There, does need that Choice Belt in hand, of course.
There it is, the Fighting Lightning. What an attack name!
It's incredible.
We love it.
And this is exactly what Pedro wants to be doing here. Being able to take the big threat off the board at 280 HP now, nothing to worry about. And then Owyn's going to be looking to try and just get that Luminium V off the bench as soon as possible with Aqua Return. But yeah, fantastic to see the Zeraora come into play now. And just Pedro, here comes down the 3rd Choice Belt. Doesn't really work on the Sableye unless he uses the
Scratch?
first attack.
Yeah, Scratch for 20. Don't ask me how I knew that. That was a complete guess. But yeah, Scratch going from 20 up to 50.
And here.
Wow. And the Fighting Lightning, Alex. We're seeing all the Lugia characters, the Fighting Lightning.
But here we go. Owyn straight away.
Oh my goodness, we forgot about...
Standard off the prizes, been held for so long with 4 powerful energy.
The double